Is there any commonality between what was required of you by Spielberg versus what was required of you here?
I'm so glad you asked that.
Where we're going, we don't need roads.
Josh, good to see you again, man. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing so well. You are I was about to swear. You are phenomenal on this, man. Seriously, thank you for taking the time. I appreciate you.
Yeah, of course. I really appreciate you saying that, man.
Of
Thank you.
course, man. I'm going to jump into this. And also, really quick, before I forget, I just like it to be on the record that I've always said West Side Story is a masterpiece. And how Spielberg did not win director for that, I will never understand.
Hey,
But
man.
I'm going to jump into this. I know as an actor, you can do all the research, you can read all the past interviews, you can watch all the trial footage, but there are decisions and conclusions about Aaron Hernandez that you're going to have to make on your own as an actor. So I am sort of curious, what is the biggest, most substantial decision you made or a conclusion that you came to about who he was entirely on your own?
Um, that's hard to say because I mean, I had a lot of help throughout. Like, it's hard for me to claim any decision by myself, because, I had people from the Boston Globe helping me. I had my showrunner, Stu. He created the show, Stu Zickerman. He was helping me out a lot. I will say that a really big decision that I wanted to make early on was a lot of accounts of this guy, as I said this a lot of people, what they have to say about him is only positive. He's very charismatic, good humor, it's sweet, funny. And it was important for me to, not make this like binary portrayal of somebody who at the very beginning you're like, he looks like a murderer, because initially I don't think that's how anybody felt. And so early on, I really wanted to establish that there was humanity there, and there was a person who everybody was rooting for, and everybody wanted to win and wanted success for. I thought it was really important to paint from it early on that character, because then as the series progresses, it only makes it more powerful when this person transforms into somebody that we don't recognize.
Because you're absolutely right. Because then it's just a one note. Then it's basically like, well, what are we doing? Why are we watching this kind of thing?
Yeah.
It's a very layered performance. You talk about people saying kind things about him. Obviously, I'd imagine that there are a lot of people you would have loved to have spoken to, but I'm going to assume maybe just didn't want to talk or haven't really wanted to talk openly about it. Do you, as an actor, do you even attempt to reach out to someone like a Tom Brady or Robert Kraft? Is there any point in doing that, or do you just assume that they're not going to talk?
I personally didn't try, and it's not like I think there's no merit to that. With the way that my brain works, um, it's almost easier for me if like if Stu were to talk to somebody and then give his ideas to me, that's easier for me than talking straight to the source,
Oh, that's
weirdly.
interesting.
And I'll tell you why. It's because if I were to reach out to people, then without, regardless of what they say, then I automatically feel like I have some responsibility to them, to tell the story their way, or shine a light on their perspective, which for the larger story, that's it doesn't really serve it to do that. Um, and it's when you're making a character, it's kind of a fragile process. A lot of things can affect you, and a lot of things can, or at least I can only speak for myself. A lot of things can affect me, and a lot of things can sway the way that I want to take something, which I try to avoid unless I feel like I really need help. And I felt like the information that we had that was available was, I mean, it's vast. There's tons of resources. So I thought that that was more than enough. And if I was to talk to people, it might have just, it honestly might have just messed with me.
Mhm. Because then there is the potential, like you said, of them tuning in and going, well, he didn't even take any suggestion
Yeah,
that I gave him.
exactly.
I get that.
Exactly.
I know, obviously, in order to play a professional football player, you got to get into incredible shape, and you did here. How close were you to being in a position where you could actually pause and go, I could play tight end for the Patriots. I could do this.
Absolutely, absolutely not even once.
Not with that attitude, man.
And I'll tell you exactly why. It was because when we went in to do the the Florida football stuff for the Gators, I wanted to be a hero. I was like, dude, I'm in tip-top shape. Like, I haven't been in this shape since I was in college. Like, this is awesome. I used to be a baller. Like, put me in. I'm going to do it all. I don't need a stunt double. I got my butt kicked so bad, dude. For like 2 days, my bones were hurting. Everything was hurting. I was like, yeah, I'm not quite the spry young man I used to be. So,
And
there was never a point where I considered, I was like, I could be a walk-on for the NFL. Like, no.
this is why I think you're a great interview. If I were in that chair, I'd be like, oh, dude, I could definitely do it, because none of us would ever know the difference. I'd be like, well, dude, I appreciate your honesty.
Oh, yeah, of course.
The first time you and I ever spoke, and I just geeked out with you a few minutes ago, was for West Side Story. And I've always said that the physicality required for that movie, for any musical, is, I think, underappreciated and awe-inspiring. I always say, to me, a musical sequence is just as impressive as a big action scene. Is there any commonality between what was required of you by Spielberg versus what was required of you here?
I'm so glad you asked that. I just kind of had this realization during another interview, where somebody was like, well, it's such a big departure, so like, what can you do? And something really interesting about that is I found similarities with Chino and Aaron, because the core essence of it is there's a sweetness that's tarnished. And over time, like this young, innocent mind gets kind of poisoned by the reality of violence, and in this case, the reality of sports and fame and money and drugs. And there was stuff that I could take from that, and I also think the discipline that it kind of takes to keep up this shape to be able to do all the. Fortunately, I didn't have to dance nearly as much as everybody else, but being around that was even inspiring, because the way that these people take care of themselves is like nothing I've ever seen. And yeah, I mean, that certainly was helpful etiquette to keep in mind while filming this process too, and trying to stay in shape for that. Because there's nothing I want to do less after a 16-hour day than work out. I mean, but that's the kind of thing you got to do. You just got to buckle down and do it.
You have earned, and I'll say this because there's one right over there, you have earned all the Taco Bell in the world, my friend. If you want to come through Chicago, I got you, man. Cheese and bean burrito, man, all of them right down there. You and I will go.
Sounds good, man. We'll have to hit you up.
All right, man. I just want you to know, I think you are truly a phenomenal actor. You and I, we've spoken a couple of times, but I hope that we just get to keep talking, because you always give me amazing performances to be able to talk about, man. I really do appreciate your time.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you too. Thanks for having me.
Good to see you guys.
Where we're going, we don't need roads.